thank you all for being here. When Gabriel invited me to present a workshop, I was thrilled. As a rabbi and as a chaplain, I wanted to speak and to teach about spirituality as we gain years. And I'm actually on a crusade, not to allow our years to pass on what I'd call autopilot, not to allow our years to pass without giving ourselves a lot of credit for the spirit that we have, the way that we've grown by the very fact that we've been around. We've interacted with lots of all kinds of people. We have many experiences. We've spent time reflecting, pondering, and that really is what nurturing one's spirit is all about. I know that there have been previous workshops during L'Chaim during this month, and they've been absolutely wonderful. We've heard presentations about a variety of things, talking about different life stages. I want to mention one. I loved Rabbi Laura Geller's presentation about her book. She spoke about the culture, the logistics of aging well, the needs that we have. And I'm very excited about getting and reading her book. But in the short time that we have today, I want to concentrate on just one area, the emotional aspects of growing older. I want to bring a lot of encouragement for each of us to confirm that we can look into the future, look into the present and into the future with good emotional and spiritual health. And of course, the physical and the spiritual are inexorably intertwined. But this afternoon, I want to concentrate on the welfare of one's spirit, to do the heart work to do that. I have to begin by defining what spirituality is. We actually do not see in Torah the concept of the spirit, but it is later in our tradition, in our history, that the sages speak of two aspects of ourselves: the physical, the body, and the aspect of the self referred to as the neshama, the soul, the spirit. And that is the intangible aspect, the transcendent, the incorporeal, the non-physical. And I'm sure that all of us recognize that aspect of ourselves. It's our emotions, it's our memories, it's that very human aspect that we share when we speak of searching for meaning in our lives. So I'm here today to talk about and to confirm that each of us is a spiritual being, and that each of us can find and nurture meaning at every age of our lives. All human beings confront change. Those are limits, losses that cause us to question life's meaning and our own values and our spiritual life. But recognizing your own self as a spiritual being offers a context for reflection and connection as you contend with change or loss in your life. And those changes at this stage in our lives can be retirement, illness, the need for caregiving, the need for receiving caregiving, or loss. And when I mention loss, I don't only mean a death, but a change, a loss in an evolving identity. I am not who I was 10 years ago. And there's some disappointment about that, physically for sure. But there's also something better about that. And I think that is emotionally, hopefully, I and all of us have gained some wisdom in the past 10 years of our lives, and certainly in the past year or year and a half of our lives. I also want to clarify before I proceed that religious practice may certainly reflect one's spirituality. Many people do find spiritual sustenance in religious observances. I absolutely do pray. I celebrate. I light candles, drink wine, all of the wonderful observances that we as Jews have as part of our tradition and part of our identity. But I want to emphasize that spirituality does not mean only religious practice. So, in our time together, as we talk about gaining years, about aging and spirituality, what I want to do with you is look at a little bit of what our tradition says, look at some text references. I want to bring some wisdom from those wiser than I, specifically looking at some of the teachings of Abraham Joshua Heschel. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel is one of my favorite teachers. And I want to share some thoughts and some hopes, what I will call encouragement, that you can make choices to bring and nurture your spirit at this time in your life. And again, I want to emphasize, you should not be on autopilot. So being spiritual means being mindful, and it takes an awareness, it takes an effort. Then if we have time at the end, of course, I want to hear some of your wisdom too. What's helpful to you? What's hindrance? So Jewish wisdom, Jewish tradition has something to say about virtually every part of life. And I want to screen share to bring just a few, a very few, a selection of some of the teachings about aging. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The first one from the Torah, from the book of Vayikra, Leviticus. You shall rise before the aged and show deference to the old. You shall fear your God. I am the Lord. I need to mention I had some trouble transferring the Hebrew onto my screen share page. I do like to show Hebrew whenever possible because our souls, whether we actually read Hebrew or understand the Hebrew or not, I believe our souls do. So I apologize that for some of these quotes, I could not transfer the Hebrew onto the pages I had hoped. But you see the English anyway. So just to mention real quickly that you see here in this quote right from Torah, that the mention of the connection to God is evidence of the spiritual nature that we are still to have. All of us are to have in showing deference to the aged. Moving on to the next one. Rabbi Yosef ben Yehuda, a man of Kfar HaBibla, said, he who learns from the young, to what is he compared? To one who eats unripe grapes and drinks wine from his vat. And he who learns from the old, to what is he compared? To one who eats ripe grapes and drinks old wine, good wine. And Rabbi, that's Rabbi Yehuda, said, don't look at the container, but at that which is in it. A wonderful quote, worthy of all of us posting in our kitchens or in our family rooms, I believe, from Pirkei Avot. And again, if we had all afternoon, I wish we could just sit and discuss each of these, but I bring these selections to give you some evidence. One of my favorite quotes is from Proverbs. Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is attained by the way of the righteous. This crown of glory and the longevity it signals are envisioned as a reward for a life well lived. In the classic Jewish imagination, aging is a prize and a source of pride. And again, I like this quote. I think about it a lot. I've let my hair go uncolored during the pandemic, and I've got to decide what to do next. put some brown or blonde back in it, or just go natural too. But our tradition says, I've earned this gray hair. In fact, there is a rabbinic teaching in the Midrash that suggests the physical signs of old age came about through a request from our patriarch, Avraham. Before Abraham, old age bore no distinctive physical signs. There's a great story that goes with this teaching. It seems that the very old, vigorous, black-haired Abraham would walk down the street with his young son, Isaac, born, if you remember, when he was 99 years old. Passerbys could not tell who was the father and who was the son. Obviously, Isaac at this stage was a young man. Abraham was upset, actually, because he was not receiving the deference he felt was due him as an elder. He therefore prayed to God, crown me with wrinkles and gray hair. And his prayer was answered. So this is from Midrash Genesis Rabbah, and it certainly shows that there's a Jewish answer for everything. And probably that was the cause of the birth of the beauty industry at that time. We have to attribute that or blame it on our patriarch. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, commented on line 27. And this is sort of heartrending, this line in Psalm 27 that we read during the month of Elul and all during the high holidays. Do not forsake me in old age. And the Baal Shem Tov said, it's not clear, it's not the pashat, the simple meaning of those words. He saw the meaning as, let not old age and stagnation rule my habits and my customs. Good advice for all of us. And speaking of that mindfulness, the Baal Shem Tov said that a person must renew their habits and customs in every moment. Spiritual aging can cause one to become stagnant and cause one's vitality and pleasure to evaporate, can cause withering and physical aging, even when one is young. And we don't want that to happen. The next quote here, rise before a person who has reached old age and show deference to the old. You shall not fear your God. I am the Lord. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has a wonderful comment on this. He interpreted this commandment about rising before a person who has reached old age, saying, reaching old age means summoning up the inner resources that enable a person to rise and accomplish their purpose in life. A wonderful, inspiring interpretation. And then I brought a quote from the Talmud. He said to him, I do not remember what he did in his youth, but the deeds of his old age I remember. Speaking of the kindness and the thoughtfulness of Rav Huna, all he modeled for community in even small ways of consideration for others. This is what this quote refers to. It's important for us to remember that what we do right now is so important. It is not to be dismissed. We are still providing teaching, modeling, inspiration to all around us. Remember not to make you feel self-conscious, but certainly if you have children, your children are watching. If you have grandchildren, your grandchildren are watching. We're even watching each other. And age certainly is not a license to be crotchety or to be annoying or to be thoughtless too. We could talk about that all day. A couple of other quotes I like. This one is from Plato. When physical eyesight declines, spiritual eyesight increases. A really nice quote from the Greek. And we know that our sages 2000 years ago, 2000 plus years ago, learned from the Greeks. And I've got to mention one more quotation. This one also is not Jewish. I recently attended a different webinar about aging and saw this sign. And I think the presenter had found it in a little quaint shop and had this, this needlepoint up. And it says, old age is not for sissies. And I've got to really disagree. Old age is for everyone. And even if you are what some might call a sissy, or what others might call a gentlewoman or a gentleman, old age is still for you. So I want to pause for just a moment. And I've been using the term old. I've been using the term elders. And I'm going to stop the share and just ask you, if you've thought about it, what term do you prefer for this stage of life when we have gained more than 60 years or more than 70 years or 80 years or perhaps 90 years or more than that? Anybody given any thought to some term?
Say it.
Hi.
Valerie.
Yeah, I would say experienced.
Nice. Experienced people. Yes, absolutely.
I like the word, this is Frances. I like the word aging because to me it defines process. And I feel that it's an evolution.
We have
and
to
a
win.
process.
Say it.
An active word. Yes. Yes. A verb, if you will. Yes, absolutely.
I'm
Anybody?
perfectly happy with old.
I was going to say
I don't like the word aging, old age. I like the word older adult, not elderly or whatever.
Ah, okay.
Say it.
Hi, this is Sheila. I like to say, I like the word maturing.
Ooh, mature. Yeah.
I like old.
I mean,
I like old.
yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, I hear difference of opinions and all important to hear. And whatever term we use, it's without judgment, if you will. It's without negative connotation. And of course, it depends on who is using it, how we're choosing it for ourselves. And again, we could talk all afternoon about that. So if I use terms during this hour which are not pleasing to you, please forgive me. And make a note in the chat too, so we can go through and think about that some more. So I can't believe that it was a couple of years ago already when I presented a Kavod on the Road session about Abraham Joshua Heschel. And I love to bring his teachings and comments. I think he was one of the greatest Jewish thinkers, greatest Jewish theologian of the 20th century. He thought and spoke a great deal about what it means to grow older, especially in a sharply age-segregated society that was worshipful, in his own words, of youth. Abraham Joshua Heschel's teachings are a good basis for discussion, and someday in the future, hopefully we can pursue all of that. But I want to refer specifically now to a time in 1961 when Heschel himself was only 54 years old. He was invited by President John Kennedy to speak at the White House Conference on Aging. His speech is easy to find online today, and it was titled, "Every Moment is an Opportunity for Greatness." And what an important message that is, just in the very name that he gave his talk. And just to think that was 60 years, 2 generations ago. Heschel spoke at length about what we might call the sociology of aging, how the generations are treating each other, what the community owes those who have reached a new stage in life that is not one that means supporting children or out working a job or carrying the responsibility and the burdens of moving our society forward. But he said American culture and policy created an unfortunate division between the world of the young and the world of the old. And he recognized that older people, and I'm using his terminology, have a problem. And he reiterated that throughout the conference. And this problem was more than the material. He said it was a concern of well-being. It was the agony of psychological and spiritual insecurity, loneliness, boredom, fear, and the sense of being not useful to society or family. We know that Heschel recognized the sanctity of time. Those of you who are familiar with Heschel's books or his teachings, his most famous book is The Sabbath, in which he speaks of creating a palace in time by means of the observance of the Shabbat of Shabbos. But at this conference on aging too, Heschel urged his audience to focus not only on the physical space, but also on time. And here's where it gets so good. Time poses a specific challenge for the aged, he said. Old age has the vicious tendency of depriving a person of the present. It does so when the, quote, older person thinks of himself as belonging only to the past. This tendency must be balanced by attitudes and policies that offer the elderly an opportunity to be present, to continue the process of growing. Such an important message. And again, I don't always love Heschel's terminology. He was not careful about being gender neutral at all. And he used the term elderly, which some of us like and some of us don't. But anyway, the teaching is so important that there must be in the attitudes that all of us share, that we have the opportunity to be present, to be in the present in order to continue the process of growing. And so important for us to think as we interact with each other, as we interact with those who are younger than us, is to be in the present and not just to be reflecting the past. It is precisely this openness to the present, Heschel argued, that a person must strive for. And this requires not just programs or activities. He wrote in 1961. He was a very straightforward, no-nonsense person. He said, the emphasis only on recreation aggravates rather than ameliorates a condition it is trying to deal with, naming the trivialization of existence. He emphasized seniors are capable of growth, he said. There should be courses, tasks that foster intellectual engagement, skill re-education, work. Seniors are capable of growth, and everyone must see that, especially the elders themselves. And this requires not just doing, not just programs, not just activities or visits, but internal work. That is spiritual work. So that's sort of our charge and some of the homework that I'm going to leave you with today. So we want to tackle this challenge of spiritual work. And I think we're all up to the task just by the very fact that you're here with us this afternoon. So I want you all to be mindful. Again, that's sort of the underlying foundation of my presentation today. And what I want to take you through is a look at the past, the present, and the future. Looking at the past, we can feel gratitude for all the blessings that we've already received in our lives. Looking at the present, we can recognize, appreciate, and use the abilities we have where we are in the here and now. And looking at the future too, I want to encourage you to continue to think about your potential, a really important word for us, our potential. So to step one, nurturing the spiritual possibilities and who we are in our 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And this is so true even as one faces the end of life. We can use our stories, our histories, our accomplishments as a source of spiritual fulfillment. So important is concentrating on what I summarize in one word as gratitude. That's critical for finding contentment and peace. We can reflect on a life well lived. I know that counting one's blessings is very hard work. It's easier to get lost in sadness. It's easy to slip into depression sometime, to feel morose. But I have not met anyone who doesn't have any blessings in his or her life. There's the big major ones, the comfort we find in our homes, perhaps in family, perhaps in accomplishments, or there's the little blessings we have in our lives. A neighbor who reaches out, a friendly checker at the supermarket who gives you a smile, looks into your eyes, and seems to truly care how you are when they say, "How are you?" Even the opportunity to come together, if not in person, but virtually on Zoom as we're doing now. And I want to emphasize it's our choice. It's our choice about whether to dwell on the blessings or the curses in our personal history. I want to bring really quickly a personal example of something that is absolutely not major, but served as a reminder for me about how it was my choice about how one day, just one day, would unfold for me. I, not too long ago, had a series of bad interactions in my work, something that wasn't major, but I received a letter that contained some criticism, and I saw it as hurtful and upsetting. It was not constructive, in my opinion. And I actually cried, and that was an appropriate reaction. I was angry too. I could sort of feel my blood pressure going up, and I said, "This is not healthy. I don't want to do this." My day was ruined. My weekend was ruined. My upcoming vacation, I was planning on a short vacation at that time, and I felt my vacation's ruined. I'm going to be dwelling on this bad letter that I got. And then I realized that I had a choice. Yes, this was a very irritating, crummy situation, but it was still my choice about how to emotionally or spiritually deal with it. And that what I needed to do was to take the advice that I was giving my hospice patients about the choices they have, even when facing the end of life. I could spend the day ranting about how ugly and stupid that woman who wrote me such a letter was in such an insulting way. I was really hurt. Or I could require myself, almost force myself to think about the good situations that had happened to me recently, the blessings in my life. A young person who had asked me to conduct her wedding, a hug that I had received from a neighbor once we went outside and were talking with each other. A clerk at Sprouts who's always friendly in spite of having not the best job in the world. A compliment that I had received on some other work I had done. The kindness people extend to me is what I need to think about. It was an exercise. It wasn't easy. I had to force myself with a great deal of mindfulness to stop thinking about the insult and to think about that smiling bride. And it did help to raise my spirits. I wasn't going to let an insult ruin my weekend. I know this example is a bit trivial in the big picture of our lives, but it is a sample, an example of the control that one can have in the life of your spirit. You need to be mindful. You need to practice that. I want to bring a Jewish teaching, a short Jewish story from the Hasidic tradition. And I wish I could do this in Yiddish for you, or perhaps even say it with a Yiddish accent. No matter how you stir a pot of filth, it is always a pot of filth. Better to let the pot be and string pearls for the sake of heaven. The pot of filth is past iniquity or wrongs that you have done or have been done to you. Stirring that is losing yourself in the drama of your past. Stirring up that past only distracts you from the opportunity to do good in the present. And that is what stringing pearls for the sake of heaven is. And we all can do that. So thinking about your past, of course, bleeds into your present in the here and now. And I want to take a moment to concentrate on what you can do to elevate your soul in the here and now. Each of us needs to find personal ways of doing that, to concentrate on what you can do to elevate your soul. It could be singing or dancing or reading prose or poetry or calling friends or going out into nature. That's so helpful, whether it's walking around the block or going to a park or doing something just for fun, a hobby, a good movie, all things you can do to bring comfort to your soul as you choose. And of course, there is prayer. Perhaps it's chanting familiar synagogue prayers, perhaps reading an inspiring book of prayer, perhaps opening your heart to speak to God, to draw close to the Holy One yourself. I encourage each of you to ask what calms you, what brings you a sense of contentment. It's okay not to be productive all the time, but to make time for emotional, spiritual, emotional self-care. And I know all of you have heard that before. And it's actually more than just okay to do that. It's critical to do that. We're all individual. I can't tell you what choices to make for bringing comfort and nurturance to yourself. Only that it's spiritually important to make time to do something that makes you feel positive and connected. And all of us need to do that to help ourselves. But I do have one suggestion. I want to take a few minutes to talk about hitbodedut. And I don't know, those of you who have your screens on, is anyone familiar with that term of hitbodedut? Have you heard of it before? That Hasidic mystical teaching. It's an awesome tool, and it's not new at all. It comes from the Hasidic tradition of 250 years ago. Hitbodedut means solitude. The Hebrew root of the word is Beit Daled Daled, Badad, meaning the self, alone. But it's a purpose I'm sorry, it's a practice of the experience of solitude, of engaging in self time with the purpose of drawing close to God. This practice has its source in the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. The Baal Shem Tov would go off into the woods and just talk to God. Now, he lived close to woods. Not all of us do, but we all do have quiet corners, I hope, in a home or in our living room or in our bedroom in the middle of the night even. And of course, the Baal Shem Tov lived a spiritually aware, very elevated life. And most of us have not reached that level, but we can work on it. As my teacher in my seminary taught, to begin, at first, just set aside 15 minutes every day. Then after some months of doing that, set aside a half an hour with the goal of setting aside an hour of your day daily to talking to God, to talking to God. Be comfortable, be alone, be in a spot in your house or maybe walking in a calming place to out loud move your lips, move your mouth to talk to God, telling God about whatever is on your mind or in your heart. I asked my teacher, can I do hitbodedut as I'm driving to work, for example? And he said, no, no, no. Definitely has to be in a more calming circumstance than being out in traffic. But anyway, talk to God and tell God about whatever is on your mind, your observations, your worries, your thanks, even your complaints. It's okay. It's good to tell God about your complaints. This is a good time to talk about and confront your fears, for example. And I use the word God. I recognize that not all of us would choose to use the word God. We might use higher power. We might refer to the creator of the universe. We might refer to a force greater than ourselves. But have in mind, have in heart that greater goodness who is available to you. Whatever your worries, your fears are, talk about your worries about loneliness. Talk about your worries about aging. Talk about your worries about dying. But you've got to move your mouth while you do hitbodedut and talk. You may not, you very possibly will not hear God talk back to you, but you draw close to God by talking to him, her, from your end. And again, this is something you have to work on. You have to practice. You have to prioritize the time to daily do this. And you will build a relationship to the holy that will serve you all your days, the good ones and the hard days, all the days to the very end of your life. There are some online sources. If you Google hitbodedut, Reformed Judaism website has some teachings. The Breslov site is another example. Some actually call hitbodedut prayer. I call it just talking and building a relationship. I have to confess, I have to tell you that I'm still working on my personal practice of hitbodedut. I still need to strengthen my own practice, my own relationship with the divine. But the thought that someday when I'm sitting in a nursing home, a skilled nursing facility with nothing much else to do, I can engage in the most amazing, the most uplifting, the most awesome, the most spiritually great thing to do every day. I can turn to my relationship with the Holy One and have a conversation with my God, whom by that time I hope to know really well. But I've got to start working on this right now. All of you do. Rabbi Dale Friedman was a keynote speaker a few years ago, and her wonderful book, Grit and Grace, Jewish Wisdom for Growing Older, brings a reminder of a few of her ideas for current practice. And I want to just take a moment to share those with you. Let go of what doesn't serve you, not just the stuff, but time commitments, the resentments, the bad attitudes. Practice interdependence, not only asking for help daily, but figure out who calls to you, who speaks to you, with whom can you get together. Always be learning something new. And again, practice that attitude of gratitude. Those of you might be familiar with the Moda'ani or Modeh-Ani prayer in the morning, thanking God for waking up to a new day. I want to share with you, of course, you probably have heard how our sages, our rabbis wrote in the Talmud that we are to say 100 blessings a day. And the purpose of saying those blessings, whether the blessing when you eat a piece of bread, or the blessing when you take a drink of water, or the blessing when you see a rainbow, or blessing when you wash your hands, whatever the blessing might be, the purpose is to build a relationship with the Holy One and also to express thanks. I want to extend that with you. Try to say 100 thank yous a day. 100 thank yous to people around you, to God when something feels good for you. Say thank you to yourself. Go ahead and try that 100 thank yous a day and see what that does for your spirit. So we are almost out of time. I wish we had time to just open the floor. I know this is very personal. I'd love to ask your experiences about when you have found communing with God to be uplifting. If anybody wants to write anything in the chat, I'm not good about looking at the chat as I'm talking, but perhaps I can do that at the end, and I'm counting on Gabriel to let me know what questions there are. But I want to quickly move into the future, all of us. For each of us, as long as we live, no matter what our abilities, each of us still has potential. I might not be earning a living. I might be not able to take the trips that I want to do. I might not be even might not be a human doing in any way, but I'm still a human being. Although I'm not a human doing, I'm still a human being. I can tell my stories, whether teaching from the wisdom that I've acquired through formal learning or through long experience. I have something to share with those around me. So it's our spiritual obligation to age well, so that others we meet may have the courage, may have the spiritual depth to do the same. I want to bring a quick teaching of the author, Joan Chatzitzer. She's actually a nun and a theologian who's now 85 years old. And she says, it is our spiritual obligation to age well, so that the others we meet may have the courage and the spiritual depth to do the same. That those others might be family, they might be friends, they might be aides, they might be the checker at the supermarket again, they might be your neighbor, but all of you have the potential to be a role model for everyone who sees you, for knowing how to age well. I can bring assurance and smiles to other, whether my grandfathers or aides in that nursing home where I might be. Every such act is a spiritual act, uplifting another's day and uplifting my day too. So again, to the saying of Abraham Joshua Heschel, every moment is an opportunity for greatness. What an amazing attitude. I really encourage you to think, to feel, to open your heart in terms of opportunity. I can't wish away my arthritis, but I can choose my attitude, and that's my opportunity. So we can build meaning into every day. We can choose to nurture our spirits. We can string pearls. We can concentrate on our potentials. And all of this can bring contentment, can bring peace. So, Gabriel, I think I'll conclude with that. And of course, I would love to open the floor to your comments, to your input.
Thank you, Rabbi Gilbert. I'll start with what we received in the chat, and then we'll open it up to the group with our remaining time. In reference to some of those words earlier on, we heard the stage of wisdom, senior, vintage, seasoned, wisdom generation, experienced and wise. Someone said the word elders denotes respect. Someone said that they liked the comment about being present when with younger people, that we need to be good listeners too. Someone did encourage you to keep your hair the way it is and said that it's beautiful. And then we had thanking you for all your wisdom, no matter how old we are. I believe we need to be reminded of and taught about all of the concepts that you so clearly defined and presented. Here's wishing everyone the strength and wisdom to engage in many of the practices that you suggest. And then we do have a question, so we'll start with this one. In speaking to God or the divine, what is the meaning of fear as opposed to respect?
Oh, wow. Okay. Important question. And in Hebrew, I turn to the Hebrew, we have a term we call norah. And there are times when we read in the English translation, the word norah being translated as fear. And so often in the prayer book, we see that reference to exhibit a fear of God. But there's also a very valid translation of the word norah as awe, A-W-E. And I actually prefer that one. If we are to think of the God of our tradition as a God of goodness, a God of support, a God of presence for us, I prefer the word awe. So when we can engage with our God coming from a place of awe, that includes respect, recognition of greatness, recognition of almightiness, recognition of the power of God. But I believe it doesn't have to be fear, if that answers that question. Let me ask you, can you share, can we take the couple of minutes we have for anyone here to share something that has worked for them, that has been helpful, uplifting, elevating in your personal practice of spirituality that you might want to share?
I'm going to say I'm in a 12-step program because I am unfortunately a compulsive overeater. And every day I turn, when I get up in the morning and I swing my legs out, I turn to me, my higher power is God. And I turn to God and I say, please help me arrest this disease that I have just for today. And I will be grateful. And then I have to go do the work. I have to take the action because it doesn't just happen. And I listen for the messages. And that's the way that one day at a time I live my life.
That's so important. The teaching you're bringing for all of us, that we can have that personal relationship. We can ask for help and support. Absolutely. And that you're taking it in very doable pieces, a day at a time. And that you're bringing attitude for that ability to do that. You've said so much in half a minute.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I appreciate you.
My dog really helps me spiritually because she gets up every single day and she says, oh boy, we're going for a walk. Oh boy, kibble for breakfast. Oh boy, kibble for supper. You know, she just has this appreciation, and it has really helped me cultivate my own gratitude.
That's such a wonderful example. One, it's a great model for everyone who has a pet. Also, what you've just provided for us is the example of this mindfulness, which I mentioned more, earlier in the hour, that, you could just say, oh, here's my dog. My dog is going out. My dog needs to be fed. My dog's eating dinner again. The kibble is all over the floor, whatever. But you tuned in with beautiful mindfulness to the potential and the opportunity to just see these spiritual moments that you have every day present for you. Great example.
I find every day in dealing with people, you have to deal with people who have a hard job, maybe a waitress or a nurse or someone who's having a hard time. And I try to find something about that person that I can compliment and make them feel better. And that makes me feel better all day.
So true. It's really so elevating to give someone a compliment for something, whether it's something they're wearing or something they've said or something they're doing, and it elevates you and elevates them. Yeah, really makes a difference in your life.
Sometimes what I do in terms of gratitude, and as a senior person, is I think about familiarity, because it's reassuring. And sometimes when things change and you have to adapt to the change, if you can find the gratitude in the familiarity of life, it's reassuring. And so that's my message, that's my communication with my higher power, is allow me to feel that. Allow me as an aging person to feel that and be grateful that I have that.
You're talking about comfort, you're talking about gratitude, and you're talking about relationship with the higher power. Lots of good things there. Yeah.
I heard something recently, and I don't know if that is something that would be a good thing to do or not. This person was told by his father, I believe, or his grandfather, when you're feeling down in the dumps, or you're depressed or whatever, find someone else that has a depressed problem, and you can talk together, and maybe if you're doing something for someone, that's good for you, and it's good for them if it is helpful. But I don't know. It seems like it's possible that if you find someone that's more depressed than you, it rubs off. I don't know which is worse. I mean, which is better to do. Any ideas on that? And he said that was his motto. He said, when I feel down, I find somebody who's more down than I am, and I can bring them up. And I don't know. It was some comedian, I think.
Wow, that's interesting. I would really have to give that more thought. My first thought is when someone's feeling depressed, it's hard to start going to look for someone else. We're all so different if that works for that person. But I think sort of maybe the underlying foundational idea of that is that one way to uplift ourselves is by bringing something positive to another person.
Yeah.
I don't know if it matters whether that person is a depressed person or not. I don't know. I'd have to give that a lot more thought. But again, probably because the last 16 months, the only place I think I ever went was to a supermarket late at night. But I'm having that image of, again, bringing smiles, bringing thanks, bringing all of that spiritual connection to the checkers you see at the checkout lane or other shoppers late at night or whatever, is helpful.
Well, what's worked for me has been to use that experience with another person as a gauge for myself. And I'm answering the second part of the concern about becoming more depressed, because I think that when you're with someone who is depressing, it is not, it can impact the way you feel, but it can also be used as a gauge for yourself to know where you are emotionally, not to compare yourself to the other person, but to know just how much you can handle. And I hope, does that make sense? I hope, in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
What thought comes to me just after giving this another minute or two of thought is that there is wisdom, and it's actually confirmed in our tradition, that we first have to take care of ourselves and then take care of another. So, it's the story of when the oxygen masks fall, put it on yourself before you put it on someone else. So off the top of my head, I would say there might be better ways to first deal with your own depression and then think in terms of helping another who is in need of that help.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for your insight and to everyone who has shared. But I'm the kind of person who worries about everything, the world, my family. I get so caught up even at night that a young friend of mine once told me, just stay in the moment. And I find I have to tell myself, stay in the moment. Don't let those thoughts that they just come and they're so frightening. And it's just worried. That's all it is. So I try to do that, just stay in the moment. I have to tell myself to do that.
Elaine, I couldn't agree with what you're saying more. And I think it's so important. I thank you for saying that out loud. I'm talking about work. Mental, emotional, spiritual, heart work that, and I keep thinking that example when I got that critical letter about my work from the supervisor. And it could have ruined my vacation. And I said, I don't want to let it do that. So I had to work hard at thinking about positive stuff. I had to list those, positive thoughts in my mind. And all kinds of situations, even those facing end of life, can dwell on, oh, my days are numbered. Oh, I'm afraid of pain tomorrow, whatever. And as a chaplain, I would encourage people to engage in the work of thinking about the blessings in your life, the good in your life. And it's absolutely hard to do. Yes. Yes.
It is.
But it's worthwhile, and it does make a difference, and it always is your choice. And whenever you have those choices, that maintains your dignity. That that elevates you.